Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our LPM webinar. I'm Kevin McMenamin, your host with Loss Prevention Magazine, and with me, as usual, although not last month, but as usual, my partner in organized retail crime here, Jack Britton. Jack, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to have this session get started today. This is a really important topic. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I know that Jack is very passionate about. I know Stephanie's very passionate about, and we had some conversations around how we need to make sure that these conversations come to the forefront on this particular topic when we talk about mental health in retail, and speaking specifically about the impact on the asset protection world. Our world in retail has changed and evolved over the last several years, and there's a lot of different pressures that are facing everybody out there in the field, way different than it was certainly when I was in the stores, or when Jack was, or any of that. So we're excited to have a couple of great guests with us here today to help us explore this topic a little bit more and kind of get into that conversation around, is it okay to not be okay? Because there are a lot of people that are struggling with all of the pressures and the anxieties and things that a lot of this changes in customer behavior and society and so forth, with increases in violence and theft and things like that, that have taken a toll. And we're going to explore that in our conversations today with our two guests. But before we get started, let's start with a thank you to our sponsors. Without these folks, we can't pull this kind of stuff off. So please show them some love. Please learn a little bit more about them. Take the time to just understand a little bit more about their business. And then hopefully if their business can help your business, you're reaching out to them. And today's sponsor is Fifth Theory. Fifth Theory is a minority-owned business located in Chicago, Illinois, providing digital risk and talent assessments and surveys to ensure that organizations and their employees engage in safe and responsible behaviors that always advance a strong customer experience. Fifth Theory's leading brands include the Talent First Inventory, the Employee Safety Inventory, and the Campbell Leadership Index, among others. Fifth Theory's EdTech division offers assessment-based self-coaching solutions that assist students in their efforts to master high-stakes exams and accelerate their careers. Learn more about them and visit fifththeory.com. Next up is a big thank you to our education partner, the Loss Prevention Foundation. If you are LPQ or LPC certified, make sure that you use this session in your continuing education credits, because you get in 3 credits for today's session. Also, from Loss Prevention Magazine, if you are not already a subscriber, please scan that QR code. And if it's not fast enough to get the phone out before I get through here, I promise I will bring this up again at the end of the session, so you can scan that QR code and subscribe today. It is free, F-R-E-E, free. All right, Jack, that was it for the housekeeping stuff. Let's get started. You want to introduce Ren?
Okay, our first guest today is Dr. Ren Brown, MD. He's Vice President of Medical Affairs and Clinical Strategy at Whole Foods. Ren, that's a mouthful. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you do it, and give our audience a little bit more on your background to start with?
Sure, Jack, and thank you, and Kevin, thanks for having me today. Yeah, it's I joke it's sort of a loosely defined. I don't know exactly what I do on a day-to-day basis. I wear many hats, but I like to summarize it for Whole Foods team members. I feel like I'm the family doctor for the Whole Foods family. Obviously, being a medical doctor, I have a clinical background. I'm board certified in internal medicine and pediatrics, so passionate about primary care. Being a primary care doc for many years and really listening to my patients led to an emphasis in mental health and a real passion around that. So, but I help on the benefit side. I help on the asset protection side. I sort of link strategies and try and bridge strategies around one human employee, team member going through all of these different worlds and trying to live and help Whole Foods team members live more fully and more wholly.
Now, you've got a lot of clinical experience that you bring to the table, Ren. Tell us a little bit about that, and how does that apply to what you're doing in your role today?
Yeah, started out back in 2002, graduated from residency from Loma Linda, so have sort of a what they call the whole person care background. So basically, it's taking into account all parts of the human experience, and did a primary care practice, internal medicine and peds, both adults and kids. Longer visits, really believed in getting to know my patients like many primary care docs do, which as you know, a lot of primary care has to sit around and learn behavioral health, mental health, whole person care. So really leverage that training. And then joined Whole Foods, like the model. So joined Whole Foods in 2013 and really started leveraging, obviously it fits, right? Whole Foods, whole person care, that holistic view of people and the health and the wellness brand that Whole Foods represents. It fit very well. And I've sort of leveraged that knowledge base and that understanding of whole people and the needs of whole people, throughout different strategies that they may want to bring me into.
Ren, it sounds like this has been a family business. Based on our conversation here earlier, it sounds like it's something that you've pretty much grown up with.
It is. My passion around behavioral health, mental health starts with dinners. My dad is a neuropsychologist, brain research. He's a expert in the corpus callosum and how the right hemisphere talks to the left hemisphere. My mom was a nurse and hospital administrator. So I grew up with this link of understanding of brain function, mental health, medicine. And so it started very young and then translated into a real understanding, I like to say, of the holistic nature of human beings, and also the embodiment of our human experience, meaning we tend to think of cognition and concentration, focus, processing as somehow out there and sort of not embodied. And, my heart doesn't affect my brain, but all of that physiology affects everything else, and really having an appreciation for instance, our topic today, how our whole body, our organs, our physiology can affect how we feel and our experience of our existence within ourselves and our communities. So yeah, it started from a very young age, Jack.
That's great. Ren, based on your experience, what are you seeing as some of the more common issues? We talk about, because obviously we're, some of that stress manifests into physical ailments, so to speak, psychological ailments, so to speak. There's a little bit of everything there, right? What are you seeing as some of the more common issues and some of the concerns that your office is looking to address?
Yeah. Well, those who have any medical background have heard this. It's sort of cliche, but I'll use it. Is that common things happen most commonly, meaning, someone comes in and they've got a concern, think of the common things first. When we create our differentials, so I sort of look at our population in the same way, what's coming at us, and really, Kevin, it's the same it's stresses, it's fears. I think I would highlight sort of an emphasis more on loneliness. We know we have an epidemic of loneliness now. Our Surgeon General's helped us understand. So that I would say is highlighting more. Still was a common thing, but then also sadness, stresses, fears, loneliness, sadness, anxiety, you can call it what you want. Those are truly the things that we see and want to help our team members with, and just address that low-hanging fruit, not in the sense that we get more experience than other employers. It's just that those are the things we want to be most prepared to help our team members navigate.
So if you looked at the way things have gone here, primarily over the last several years even, what do you think some of the primary concerns that have occurred in society or in the retail environment that have kind of led us to where we are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say is, I'll give you, this is my opinion of what I've seen. I don't know if I've got data behind it, but I'll give you my N of one opinion on this, which is so much more comes at us now. I like to say that when I look at technologies, particularly on the healthcare side, that should promote the human endeavor. I like to climb mountains. If I look at a technology, that should help me reach the peak, not drag me down or just be excessive weight on my back. What I would say is we've got good technologies, but they're also not necessarily the best yet. They're not refined. For instance, emails, or what I would call all these tools, this technology creates what I would call the whirlwind of urgency, which is there's no way to filter everything. Everything comes with the same level of urgency at us, whether it's anything we're perceived, whether it's a customer, whether it's an email or a colleague, or we have a way of getting our tasks to us, but we don't have a good way of triaging, and that can create this sense of urgency in whatever workplace environment we're in, whether it's behind a desk or in front of people. We don't yet have a way of triaging those things, those tasks, and they can then create urgency, which then creates vigilance, which then creates excessive vigilance and fatigue and burnout. And I think we're all getting to that point. So I would say it all sort of comes back to a need to then take our work tasks to the next step, which is how do we help our employees not only receive the information, but triage it, prioritize it in a sense that doesn't lead to the stressors, the burnout, the fatigue. That's not, like I said, any more common for Whole Foods. It's just a general experience that I see a lot of people dealing with. And then, have them help process that cognitive dissonance that they experience when they can't always meet all the tasks every day that our technology then gives us. And I mean, Jack, I know you and I, we've lived through pre-email to, we've lived like, we've been through this, and it is a different world. And I don't know if we've got those, but that's what I would see as a doctor who cares for the patients that I see, the people that I'm in community with that I want to help. That's one of those things, is the worry that there's so much coming at them that we need to help them prioritize better.
What's some of the coaching that you could give on something like that, Ren? Because I just from a general business operation, right? Emails come in, and you feel like you have to respond, right? You feel like you need to get back to somebody, and unfortunately, I'm one who I know I've been guilty of it, because people look at me and they say, oh, well, I got an email from Kevin, I have to respond. But that email may have come at like 2 a.m, or it might have come at 10 o'clock at night, or it might have come at 6, because I was up and did stuff and sent stuff. And I've had to coach my team to say, listen, just because I sent it, does not mean you have to respond to it, until it's like a reasonable hour, right? I might send it, and I've tried to get better about scheduling stuff that, if I'm up at midnight doing some work and I send some stuff out, I try to use that schedule button so it doesn't even leave my my outbox until 7, 8, 9 a.m. or whatever, to try to be a little bit better about that. But I've also had to coach my teams and say, listen, don't feel like you got to get right back to me, because there's that pressure, right? We bring it on ourselves. We see that email, and logic says this can wait until 8 a.m. tomorrow, but if you weren't doing anything, or you're on your phone and all of a sudden you're thinking about it, now you got to feel like you need to respond, or it's your boss, so you feel like you need to respond, or that type of thing, right? What are some of the ways that we can help coach our employees about some of these tasks that, that they're being bombarded with, that to be able to help them dial it back a little bit and take that breath?
Yeah, right. I think there's strategy and then tactics, right? I mean, it's sort of that. So I'll start with the strategy, I think, is to be more connected. I mean, we're talking about the pressures of going back to the workplace, and that, people like, I'm used to the virtual, that is so convenient. And then, of course, there's the pushback, which is, well, we've lost the human connection. And Kevin, if you and I are in community together, even in this way, I don't necessarily read all your body. I don't understand who you are more fully. Meaning I can't always trust that I understand where you're coming from, that you and I are connected deeply in an understanding where I can say, Kevin's got my back. I can put that one off, because we're so connected now that I can prioritize, because I understand where I think we lose some of that So we've got to find ways and strategies, I think, to be more connected together, to say, like you said, hey, this is going to come over to you, understand me fully, that I truly have your back. If, like, when I say something that this is not urgent, you can trust that I mean it's not urgent, that I don't have another agenda. And being more fully connected in a community way again. And then I would say tactically, I just think there needs to be better tools where I can send an email that lacks emotion, that lacks connection, that lacks any understanding from the receiver, and give them that level of priority, red, yellow, green, some, categorize, using more of those tools to translate to each other so that I can then prioritize and help, and that's on the email side. And then I think just on the face-to-face, like for instance, stores or retail or those type of environments, is really understanding and accepting the fact that now everything comes at every one of us immediately. Even if I don't have my phone on the floor, when I'm at break, all of a sudden I'm hit with my whole world of family and kids or whatever, loved ones, and it just is we're all have just this burden of this information of which we now carry with us. And I think just an understanding of the ability to only process so much, some understanding in how we train people, even on the asset protection side, right? What they can tolerate is, I think, less in a bundle than it would be in the past, because we have so much already up on our frontal lobes now that it's hard to get them to understand even one thing, new.
So how do you feel the pace of change, just as quickly as things are moving, especially in retail today, with the way we've evolved even over the last several years, following the pandemic and so forth? How do you think that pace of change is really impacting employee health, the way that we handle things in the stores?
Very much so. These are great questions. It does. Because we're holistic, we're whole people. The brain, so if you're stressing the brain, I think all of us have seen these really great research articles. We're hit with so much even good information that comes through about medical progress and the understanding of how holistic in nature we are. If I am anxious, it affects obviously things like my blood pressure, but it also affects my digestive system. It affects my kidney function. It affects my liver function. It affects every part of our body. We cannot tease out. We do in medicine. We have neurology, we have endocrinology, we have nephrology, we have these specialties. And I think we tend to see our body as like parsed out when really we're holistic. So what I would say is, the pace and what is affecting the stressors of our employees is affecting their bodies. They are embodied people, which then leads to experience, whether it's on asset protection because of an injury, because they can't concentrate and focus, or they're distracted, or they just didn't process the education, or whether it's on the benefit side of medical claims and pharmacy claims. You're gonna see it somewhere. So what I would say is the pace has then changed and increased our experiences on both all of these. So we need to then, the response should be to have a holistic view of an employee, a team member, we call them, and see them as not just asset protection or benefits over here or EAP or wellness. And we've got these silos. See them as one human being now that is taxed, trying to make their way through all of these and really starting to pull these processes together to get more of the human experience and the human journey that we experience, and working together to make it easier for the employee to navigate all of it. Did that answer your question, Jack? It's a long answer, sorry. But
good answer.
You think that's the approach that retail in general should be taking, Ren, as far as that stepping, when we talk about what are we getting right and what are we getting wrong, right? And what are the opportunities across just retail in general? There are companies that are starting to try to not put those things into separate buckets, but But what are you seeing, and what are you seeing as the opportunities facing retail today?
I think what we're getting right is there's an emphasis in all of the different, and silo is maybe too strong a word for most employers, but some where we've got wellness teams working, we've got, benefits teams working, we've got asset protection, we've got all these different groups sort of working on these things and really emphasizing particularly mental health. Great. Those are really successes. Everybody's focused on that. The thing is that we're not thinking of people holistically and also thinking of their corporate experience and their journey holistically, like I said. And that's the opportunity, is to extend a hand. I love what Whole Foods is doing with, allowing me to bridge some of these things and these concepts. We've had some really good successes in bridging these and really educating people and getting one journey, or starting to lean into one journey rather than multiple journeys for multiple different things. So I would say if I was to, bridge clinical experience to now corporate experience, I would say the biggest opportunity is to really understand that you've got to start bridging these teams, communicating, working together, seeing this as one human journey. We obviously, for compliance reasons, we need to stay separate in our own worlds, but only for certain things, not for everything. And seeing the one journey, particularly on things like mental health, see it as one journey, and then how do we work together to integrate that one journey?
Do we see that? So, and I think setting up for this, we talked a little bit about that holistic approach that applies to all associates, right? But there are different stress levels when it comes to, a store leader versus an associate, right? And the level of responsibility that's there. And certainly from an AP perspective, and I know you do a lot of work with Mike Lamaro there at Whole Foods, and he speaks so highly of you and everything that you guys have done together. What do you see as some of the challenges and opportunities specifically for AP? I hate to silo now that we're talking about putting everybody together, but at the same time, there is that a little bit of that, it's a little bit different when you're responsible, for the safety and security of the building versus the one who just works inside the building and you're relying on that other person, right? But there's some, there are some perceived challenges with that. And we see that with the leadership too. I mean, there are plenty of directors and regional directors and VPs of asset protection that they don't sleep well at night anymore. They don't want to get that phone call that, there was an active shooter,
right,
in their building, and dealing with the aftermath from all of that, let alone the human loss from all of that. Right. It's a lot to think about, and it's one thing to be prepared for it, but then when it happens, right. So, what are some of those sort of challenges and opportunities you think from an AP world in particular when it comes to AP mental health?
Right. Well, I would say you are all on the front lines of that hypervigilance that I see employees in particularly like things like the retail space where they could come to work and feel safer. They could come to work and feel as if their community was safer. The overall sort of temperature in the room of their communities was less elevated, less escalated. And so I think when it comes to asset protection and safety, to me, you're right. I mean, it is a burden that I hope to support more in that that hypervigilance of really trying to get employees to understand that we can help them be safe. And I would say, to me, one of the biggest things is when you have a hypervigilant mind, it's hard to process. Just think of the last time you've been stressed and someone gives you new information. It's hard to actually remember that information, process it, and then use it in my daily life. So I would say even one of the tactical challenges is actually getting employees today to get the information in that you want them to understand how to be safe, how to avoid injury, there's the level of keeping them safe. And then there's also the level of, getting them educated and having a cohort of people who's more hypervigilant process. So I think there's multiple challenges, but what I would say is leaning in and really addressing and trying to reduce the hypervigilance and the safety through protocol. We've talked, a lot about this in the past. Is just when you're in medicine and we've got a challenging situation, everybody feels better when we have, if this happens, I do this, we're all as a team, we interact, going through those things. So I would say all that asset protection does in those reviews and those things actually does take the hypervigilance down, but it also makes it more challenging at the same time. So I would say just understanding that, accepting it, leaning into it, as I know we do at Whole Foods, and really working with the team member to make that process of understanding safety and protocol as easy as possible in a very stressful, busy world.
Well, I think you could probably apply a lot of those same concepts that relate to asset protection to the larger retail audience as well. I mean, we have communities across this country where people have flat out said they're afraid to go to work.
Right.
What do you think that we can do to help resolve some of those types of concerns in the store and the mental health issues that come with that?
I think having the resources easily available. When you talk about quality medical care, I use the 3 A's, and I would say that understanding this, so bear with me a little. Understanding the 3 A's of quality care, which is the first and foremost in this order, is availability. So if I'm looking at any care product or vendor or provider, they first have to be available to the team members and available to people. So availability, and then affability, or what you would call bedside manner, kind, affable, and then third is ability. So what I would say is this. Whenever you're looking to make someone feel more safe, given it's asset protection, and what you're asking is no different than the concern we have about our health, right? Our safety is our health. So it's all the same thing. So that's why I'm addressing it in this way, which is you have to have resources that are easily available. If I've got a potential for a sinus infection, but I've got that urgent care, I've got Dr. Brown right there available on phone. If I've got him when I need him, what does that do? That takes me down a notch and takes my vigilance down, my worry down, my stressors down. I can trust that. And not only that, but I have a relationship that I can trust. So I would say this, taking all that down in asset protection and safety, is you have to understand how people experience their safety, which is I need to be protected through availability and easy access. If I have X, I do Y. If I have Y, I do Z. You get my point. You just keep allowing those availability pieces, and then that takes me down a notch. It makes me feel better. I'm protected. I'm safe. I know what to do. And it's easy for me. It's not hard. It's not multi-step. Now, can we always get to that point? No, I'm not. It's just a goal I would have, and what we lean into, particularly in primary care, which is how to make people feel safe in the relationship. And I would say availability. And then who's ever on the other line, make sure they're affable. Make sure you've got, whatever that resource is, it's understanding, it's relationship based, it's trusting, it's healing. Those things, even on the safety side, I think is something to keep in mind. And then, of course, they have to be able. They have to be, quality certified, all the things that you live with on a day-to-day basis.
You mentioned the availability, and I think one of the things that is really important is, obviously providing resources outside too, but making yourself available, right? In especially to your teams. What do you think are some of the signs that someone is, struggling, or having some issues, and how do you make yourself available to them? What do you recommend, and how we support each other, not just supporting, oh, well, yeah, you can call this EAP number, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
From the personal level too, what are some of the thoughts that you have around being available to each other and recognizing when someone is struggling and how to help with that?
Right. I think to me, with the biggest thing that it's been amazing is how much Whole Foods team members care for each other. How much I mean, and I'm not saying that's unique to us. It's just I'm really excited about the fact that they do. That then leads to a real sensitivity to those around us and a sensitivity to the changes. So what I would say is, just being sensitive to the fact that changes you see, if I'm working next to someone, I'm in community with someone day in and day out, I'm, in our team, being sensitive to the fact that if you see changes, that can mean something, right? And being your gut, as connected human beings, our gut reactions, our senses of maybe someone's in need, asking, what I've noticed talking to employees, not just Whole Foods, is there's a fear to ask or a fear to get involved because we don't know. If I'm told there's something wrong, I don't have the easily available resources to help, right? So if I all of a sudden, Kevin, you ask me and I say, yeah, then all of a sudden it's, well, what do I do? I mean, now I'm presented with, and what I would say to everybody is allow, give employees resources so they don't have to be the answer. What I would say is the first step is be sensitive. The second is understand that you don't have to be the answer. You can be the mechanism to get the answer and have ways of getting people to answers, but don't feel like you have to be the answer, because some do. I've got to have a response to this, which you can be a way. And then really educating. Whole Foods, I think, is doing a great job. You mentioned Michael and I have worked together to make sure that team members at Whole Foods know, if I'm presented with either myself or seeing someone else, that I know what to do and I can get people to help, that I've got the tools, easily available to then say, hey, I've noticed this and I want to get you that help, so that they're not at risk of needing to help. They're just getting people to help easily. And it goes back to that availability. You've got to make help easily available and confidential, meaning someone can reach out confidentially without even going to their team lead. That's that availability needs to go beyond the traditional EAP in a sense, which is, well, it's out there and I got to talk to someone to figure out how to go get it. You have to literally make it, in the palm of their hand or confidential, where they can then say, and just activate it on their own should they need. That's part of that availability piece.
Well, when you talk about, having these resources, making them available and stuff, there's still, is there still that stigma though about asking for help, right? I mean, I come from a background and a family, I almost said a generation, but I don't know if it's really necessarily my generation, but certainly from the background of deal with it, right?
Yeah,
suck it up,
right.
Suck it up, buttercup, deal with it, right? And that's, and that's the way I was raised. That's the way it's always been, presented. And in a lot of ways, that asking for help is perceived as a weakness, a personal weakness, or, or that someone or a perceived weakness. If someone to know that you did reach out and ask for help, but it's not, in my opinion, it's a strength that you were strong enough to recognize it and strong enough to ask for the help. How do we get past that, as a, and are you seeing, maybe even from a generational standpoint, are you seeing it easier for the younger generation that's working in the stores? Like, they're good with asking for help, but the older are not, or, but how do we get that message out there too, that everybody needs to know that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to ask for help?
So yes, there is a generational and there's a lot of debate on mental health incidents and whether we're getting more because we have more stresses in post-pandemic, or we're getting more just because more people are comfortable, right? Is it causation, correlation? Is it incidents increasing, or do we just have more people comfortable raising their hands? So there is yes, to answer your question about generational, I think there is. How do you then address that? I think you address it generationally, or you address it age, and you take those things into account. What I would say that I'm most passionate about is getting people to understand the embodiment of their mental, cognitive, processing, emotional function, like I started with, which is this. If I maintain my body, I am maintaining my brain, I am maintaining my emotions. So it's no different than meditation is no different than exercise. Walking helps with my brain function. If I want to help my emotions, I can do things that actually maintain my level of emotional health, mental health, but I can also then reverse that and help my mental health with embodied approaches. So what it does is this. I think when we make mental health somewhere out there theoretically, almost like spiritually or then it becomes, you are talking about when I am anxious or I am depressed, I am saying that my existence is not okay. When I start talking about my brain and I am feeling sad more often, or I am feeling hypervigilant more often, my brain is not working, and it's a combination of the lack of sleep or exercise or nutrition or holistic, then we can start to say, hey, you can not only do things to help that, but it takes things off of a judgment about me, because it makes it more a help of my body, like if I'm going to help my heart or if I'm going to help my muscles. To me, I want people to see working on anxiety or depression or any mental health is no different physiologically than working on any other part of your body. And I hope over time, Kevin, that can then lead to even less stigma for those who may be generationally stigmatized by it. But yes, the younger generations are more, let's go after this, let's do this. I really want to maintain my brain and my emotions. I value those things and that health. I'm active. And then the older group tends to be more, I value it. I just have been told I need to deal with it on my own. And I would say, how do you deal with heart failure on your own? How do you deal with a torn knee ligament? How do you deal with an arthritic hip? Are you dealing with that on your own? Because it's no different. You are an embodied existence. And to see things differently, I think, is an old way. And I'd love to get them to shift to more of a holistic embodied experience and a vision of themselves.
I love that, because you can't argue that, right?
Right.
And you just made total sense to somebody, to someone from my generation, or even my, I look at, situation with, even like my parents and that type of thing too, right? To be able to explain it that way, they can't argue it, right? So, you deal with heart failure, you go to a doctor, right? You're dealing with emotional failure, you go to someone who can help you with these things, right? Or if you're dealing with these stresses or these anxieties, because they're also going to manifest into physical ailments,
absolutely.
And I've seen it firsthand, and it's you let that stress get too high, and you mentioned blood pressure, you mentioned heart issues and liver issues and so forth, and a lot of people discredit that, or they don't really think about the impact, but the emotional stress will manifest itself as physical ailments.
Yeah, it is physical. It's embodied. It is, for instance, if you live with high blood pressure, if your kidneys decide your blood pressure needs to be set at a certain level and your heart works against that for too long, the wall gets thicker because the muscle gets stronger. That can lead to heart failure. Same thing, if we're hypervigilant day in and day out from all these emails or all this, if we're hypervigilant day in and day out, there are brain physiologic changes that occur that then lead to a persistent state of hypervigilance, which then leads to what we would call generalized anxiety, or something where you just can't turn your brain off from the fears, right? The fears, the cyclical thinking, those ruminations and all that persist because our brain now has been in that state for so long, it's just adapted. So we are an adaptable, evolving organism, and adaptations can be positive, but they also can be negative. And we just need to accept that. And also then, as employers, take people in and say, from day one, we are going to maintain your body. And that starts with your brain. So we're going to destigmatize this. Let's maintain your brain. Let's work on things like meditation, exercise, sleep. We're going to value those things for you and work with you on those things.
So those are some of the things that we can each focus on, right? What would you say are those top 5 priorities to help me maintain my own mental health? What's the takeaway from this from Dr. Ren Brown that says, hey, these are the key things that you should be focusing on to make sure that you're taking care of your health holistically, mental and physical.
Well, the brain needs blood flow and it needs nutrients. So we'll talk about nutrition. I can't be at Whole Foods without talking about food and healthy food, right? So, we eat healthy food, put good things in your body, put those things are healthy in your body, because your brain takes those nutrients and actually creates the function. Then also you need blood flow. You need your blood vessels. Like, it not only needs the nutrients, we need to deliver the nutrients to the brain cells. So we need to exercise and walk. And I'm not talking, there's a difference between health and fitness. I'm not talking about being fit. I'm talking about being healthy and those things that you need to do to move your body in a healthy way. The other is sleep. You not only need to remember that your brain needs to work, but it also needs to turn off. You need to be able to think, but also not think. So things like sleep. You should practice something like meditation, in which you're actively trying. If those of us who have tried meditation, when you first start, it's not easy, because it's very hard to turn your brain off when you don't practice turning your brain off. Like, you actually have to work on. So those things, eating, of course, the basics, right? The blocking and tackling, kept eating right, moving your body, sleeping. All those embodied things actually lead to the health of the neurologic organ system, your neurophysiology. That then leads to improved emotional function and emotional stamina, bandwidth, everything. It does feed on itself and help.
Would you throw taking time for yourself in that pile as well, making sure that you're making, not just taking time, but making time for yourself and to get away from work, and doing things either with the family or with the dogs or with the cats or with, whatever, making sure that we're making that time as well.
Yeah, if you're not removing yourself from the there's positive stressors. I don't want to think people that hear me say that work is no, there's good stressors, but taking yourself away and disconnecting and actually forcing yourself not to ruminate on the things of work is a healthy way to go back to work and reinvigorate. It's the same as sleep. So you need those breaks. So yes, Kevin, to answer, yes, you need those breaks to break the cycle of not only, cognition with sleep, but also with disconnecting for periods of time and thinking about other things, particularly things that bring you other joy than work, right? Work can bring us joy, but things that also bring us joy in other ways and stimulate our mind in other ways.
Yeah, I think I tend to see, at least in my opinion, that's also a little bit on the generational scale too, because it seems like the younger generation is better about taking the time for themselves, and we focus too much on work, and there's that difference between taking the time and making the time, right? You kind of have to force yourself to make sure that you do it. But I'll tell you, once you get used to it, for anybody who isn't doing it well, try it, because once you get used to it, it really helps. It's really you'll enjoy it. Trust me. We've always been bad, even as a society. I did a lot of work in the UK and in Europe, and the month of August, Europe is pretty much closed. That's holiday, right? And they take that very seriously. Where we don't, you'll have people who have 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of vacation, and they don't use it all every year.
Right.
And shame on you for not using it. Jack's rolling his eyes. Right. And Jack's also probably saying, yeah, you're one to talk, Kevin, but I've gotten better about it. So, but yeah, it's excuse me, it's something that I think people are starting to get a little bit better about, but there's also parts of the world where they've already done it better. They've segmented parts of their day, for their siesta or for their coffee break or for their whatever. South America, boy, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're having coffee and sitting back, you don't necessarily have to be to work that early. And in Europe, they do, it's a holiday. When they are on holiday, they are completely disconnected. There is no email checking. There is no, I bring my laptop with me just in case. You are out the door and you don't come back. But to your point, it makes it better to come back to work too when you do that. And it took me a long time to learn that as well. I'm not always great about it, but I'm getting better.
Yeah, I think there was a badge of honor in like revving the engine, to the point of, burn, there was sort of a societal, and I, that allowed a lot of productivity and a lot of good things came of that. But I don't think that we really allowed ourselves to acknowledge the price that was paid when the engine, burned out, and I would say that as the older I get, the more the word balance just keeps, I don't even always know what I mean by that, but just a balanced approach to this. And as employers figuring out and really wading into the gray area of what a balance may be for our workforce, our people, our community, hearing from them, and also hearing the realities of needing to run a business and weighing all that and trying to continue to strive for some sort of balance.
It's funny. You hear work-life balance and you try to think of, things that are going to be even like that. Right. But I know mine still tends to be a little heavier on one side than the other. But at least it's not completely up and down like I know it used to be. And I think that's where, people need to try to get that and try to even out those scales a little bit for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And for, in many ways, work is life. I mean, that can be taken in a wrong, but our daily work is what our existence is. And so trying to find a balance within that, not necessarily seeing them as separate, but as one, and just figuring out what the balance is there. I don't know. I'm still working on it, but I'm always striving to learn more in order to help those that I'm supposed to care for.
Excellent. Well, today's the way we're doing today's session, we've got to we're gonna forego the standard Q&A. We're gonna ask people if they do have some questions for you to throw them in the chat for us, and then Jack and I'll take those and we'll look to get responses back to folks from there. And we're hitting up on the end of the session today with you, Ren. So I do want to thank you very, very much, for the time today. I think it was a great conversation, some great insights. And Jack, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think that I like the idea of ending this on a positive note. I would ask one last question, Ren. What do you think are some of the positive things that retailers are doing today that are taking us in the right direction?
Yeah, the main thing is the real, I would call it positive peer pressure, we'll say, is that, hey, employers now are trying to retain people, and so that's good competition. Like, we want to keep our people. And so therefore we are weighing into this, we're acknowledging it, we're accepting it, we're destigmatizing it, Kevin, all those things are really good, and they're advances in how we as a society deal with this. Though I want to acknowledge those are really good steps. Just, and the benefits people, the asset protection, all the different people that I work with and talk to from many different companies are all engaged in this. And I want to highlight that, Jack. I think that is the fact that we're here talking about this, and that people are looking for solutions and looking for those balances, is a long way than we were even 3 years ago, right? 2 years ago. I mean, we've come a long way, right? So that is a big, huge step. So
beautiful.
All
right. Well, thank you again, Ren. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ren.
If we have any other questions in the Q&A, we'll try to grab those and get them out to people as well. So appreciate your time. I know you're on a tight schedule too. You've got a lot going on, so we appreciate that you got some time out of the day today to help us out. So thank you for that.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
All right, moving on. Tobbie West, Regional Director of Asset Protection Programs for Macy's. Tobbie, we're super excited to have you with us here today as well. Thanks for joining our webinar session today.
You're welcome. I really want to thank you, Jack, Kevin, and Stephanie, just for even inviting me to participate in such, this is a really important conversation around mental health in retail and how it impacts our asset protection teams.
Toby,
Absolutely.
can you give us a little bit of background on your special background here? You started back at Herald Square, right?
Yes, so I'll date myself a little bit. I actually started my career almost 20 years ago in a couple of months at Macy's Herald Square in New York City. And I started as a security guard and then worked my way through various positions from an asset protection detective to a regional director, where I was in Southern California before taking on what my current role is the director for AP training and compliance for Macy's stores. Where I have a team of 10 people with 6 direct reports, and I manage all of the policies related to asset protection, procedures, our training programs, and reviewing various situations related to asset protection that may impact the Macy's brand.
Let me ask you a question to kind of get this whole thing started here. Looking at your own career, looking at the transitions that you made as a professional, what do you think that were really some of the bigger challenges that we face from a personal evolution perspective as we go through the changes in our careers and we move up that ladder?
So I think it kind of is a good segue into what Ren was talking about, and it was work-life balance. And Kevin, it was, as you move up and just being so passionate about your career and, putting everything, into work. When you're in asset protection, you're responding to whatever it is from alarm calls. So you're kind of on call 24/7. So definitely took me a while to find that balance and what that looks like, and relying on peers and buddy systems. So when there is a special occasion, I can enjoy that with my family and still give 110% to the job to go after my career aspirations.
Can you give us a little bit more on what it means to be in charge of asset protection programs and what your role really is today, that part of it?
Yeah, so what I do is, one is our policies and procedures, making sure that they're being adhered to in stores, making sure that we're providing the training that's appropriate for our teams as we evolve with technology. A lot of our training programs, how do you go from standard reading to making them more maybe computer-based and visual, and making sure that our customer, from our colleague that we're training, that the training programs meet the needs so they can digest that information to be able to use it in the field so they can be safe and maintain safe work environments.
Toby, how easy is it? Yeah, I've been out of retailer for a little bit myself, and deal with retailers on a daily basis, but I'm not in the stores every day. But that whole world has changed, and you've been around for a little while now. How easy is it to work in retail today, and what are some of the bigger concerns that you see or that you hear from your peers?
So I wouldn't say that it's in working in retail is easier or harder than any other career, but it does have specific benefits as well as challenges. When you think about as it's associated being our customer facing industry, right? So that's very unique, where we are providing experiences for our customers, helping them get through milestones, whether it's preparing for back to school, whether it's weddings, anniversaries, things of that nature. But on the other side of that, we are also the place where our customers may be shopping, people just passing through when they're not at their best selves. And that sometimes those interactions with our colleagues may reflect that. Which causes some conflict. So there is also, that's the information that we're hearing from our colleagues. Some of those concerns related to that. Also, what they hear in the news and on social media and events that happen in other retail spaces. Now that's giving them cause for concern, and they're concerned about what's due in those moments, and how will Macy support them? So how can we prepare them if those situations arise? And that's really what we're hearing from our colleagues and my peers, as well as well-being is really important to them, and how their work environment plays a part in their overall well-being.
So you're looking, I'm sure you speak with your peers as well across the industry outside of Macy's. And if in general, what do you see as some of the biggest concerns that that you're hearing from your peers as well as the employees out there about what their biggest concerns are today? What do you think that that might encompass?
So, really, when you think about what they're hearing, we talk a lot about maybe some of the opportunities they face, how do they address those colleagues' concerns and challenges. And, when we're talking, I'm always saying, first, we got to consistently seek their feedback, getting feedback from our colleagues. What are their concerns? And when we hear those concerns, we have to take action to address them. And I think that's really important. And doing that is immediately. And then that's something that I'm really proud to say that we do at Macy's, is making sure we're reacting to that feedback that we receive, and that is inclusive of our asset protection teams. Secondly, again, how are we supporting their well-being? That's something that we need to be really thinking about, and making sure it's a part of not just a conversation after an incident, but how do we make it a part of our culture and really the ecosystem of our companies? That way we can be proactive in addressing some challenges that may arise, as well as reacting to their concerns that we're hearing from them, and just letting them know that it's okay, that maybe such situation happens, or they've seen something on the news and it's impacting them, right? How do we let them know that it's okay not to be okay in certain situations? And us keeping that conversation going and that dialogue and soliciting feedback and talking about it, I think really is some of the things that we're really talking about, and how do we support employees and keep that conversation alive.
So it sounds like there's opportunities to address this across retail. You guys have a program that you're in the process of rolling out right now, and it's kind of multifaceted. Can you tell us a little bit about how that program works and what kind of resources are available for your employees?
Yeah, I was thinking about that when Ren was speaking, in the availability piece, and that's really where we started. So what we've done is we've took the resources that we currently have at Macy's, and we curated those resources and made them available for our AP colleagues, right? Because we know they experience stressful and traumatic events. It could be inside of work, outside of work. And really what the goal is to help our teams professionally and personally work through those experiences, right? And then provide them tools to cope with the impact that it may be having on their mental health. And also letting them know, again, it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to even say they've been affected by it. You think about asset protection professionals and what they do. Sometimes there could be an adverse event dealing with an apprehension, and you ask them how they're doing, and it's just the price of doing business. It's a normal course of the job, but letting them know it's okay to maybe sit, think about it. How do you feel? And then use those resources that we've helped provide. And more details, we structured a specific sessions, even for our AP leaders, on how to lead their teams through stressful situations. We provided resources really to equip them, to equip our AP colleagues with the tools in advance. So when a situation comes up, they're better prepared to deal with them. And we've done all of this through providing live information sessions, starting in the month, which is National Mental Health Awareness Month. So we wanted to kind of couple that, make sure it was aligned with our company messaging, all colleagues, making sure AP feels included, but then also, like I said, curating an experience for them that's related to what they do day in and day out.
And what are some of those challenges that you guys are can you give us an example of one of those types of programs? I know Dave Rogers was on with us last month and did a fantastic job and really contributed a lot to the conversation. And he spoke so highly about this sort of staged program. There's like scheduled sessions and things that you guys have. And what are some of those topics that you're helping to support your team with?
So one is, we had one that was specifically related to our AP managers, our leaders in the stores. And it's really how to help your team manage stressful situations. So giving them tools as leaders, so when those situations arise, they can understand, identify it, and have specific tactics. And then some of the other ones for our colleagues are how to cope with stress, how to prepare for a pending event that could be, also traumatic and things of that nature. Just some of those are the specific things that we've looked at so we can better prepare them.
You look at a lot of the events that loss prevention, asset protection people tend to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, there's obviously there's a concern about aggressive behavior with some of the people that we face. But there's even things like you know, I can remember specific times where someone was apprehended and it crushed them to, you know, to actually see their response to the fact that they'd messed up their lives through a bad decision. And that was emotional for me as well. And I'm sure it is for most asset protection leaders out there that have to deal with that type of thing on a day-to-day basis. There's all types of stressors like that we deal with, that I think that a lot of people don't even realize that we have to deal with. What are some of those tools that we have that are available to those folks in dealing with that type of situation? I mean, obviously one of them is, hey, I'm here, I've been through it, I understand, and we kind of talk through it. Is there any other special programs or tools that we have to help deal with those?
Well, we deal with that through our normal training protocols. So how do you respond with empathy in that situation, right? We don't know the individuals in depth that we're dealing with, regardless if a person made a mistake in our store, and that's how we interacted with them, and that was our first experience of them, to deal with those situations with empathy. So we make that a part of our training protocol up front, is how to handle those situations with empathy, not to be judgmental in those situations, and that's how we really handle it, is treat everybody like a person. One of the things that I like to do is, when we talk about the term shoplifter, something I say, I don't call people shoplifters. I say a person who shoplifted. It's something they did and not who they are. So I think role modeling behavior for our leaders, for our detectives, when they're in stores, is really important. And that's how we impact that.
That's an interesting perspective to refer to it as a person who shoplifted. I know some people will say a dishonest customer, you know, but I think even that, to your point, you know, still defines them. You've defined them as a dishonest person versus somebody who made a mistake, and doesn't necessarily have to define them. And I know there's lots of programs out there that help support re-education, like the NAS program, the National Association for Shoplifting Prevention, that helps, especially with youth. That, you know, whether it's peer pressure or whether it's just a bad decision, it doesn't necessarily need to define who you are. You don't need to wind up in the court systems, you know, next week, let alone for the rest of your life. You know, let's get you some training, let's get you some education, let's get you those resources, right? And I think, you know, what we're talking about here is the same kind of thing with mental health, and making those resources available. I think, you know, Ren hit the nail on the head with that first and foremost being available. How do you promote with your teams to make sure that you're making sure that your team leaders are available to that team? What's the messaging that you would give to anybody, you know, in a leadership role, to help make sure that they are making themselves available, not only just making sure that people know there's other resources out here, right, but I'm here for you as well. What's your thoughts on that?
It's one, messaging, right? So we are always talking about safety first, and not being focused on recovering merchandise or stopping a loss or making an apprehension. It's really about your safety first. And when you put that above and beyond, that lets colleagues know that you're interested in them, not just what they can do for you as an employee. Secondly, is being approachable. You have to be able to have conversations with your team, with your store partners, outside of the day-to-day work, you know, outside of tasks. Ask them, how are they doing? When you see a change in your colleagues' behavior, inquire about it, you know, not just assuming that this is something we need to, you know, sit down and talk about, well, you haven't done X, Y, and Z, but is there anything that's going on outside of work that may be impacting it? Letting them know that you care about them as a person. I think that's been really key for people being able to now open up and come to you. And when you hear about a situation, reach out. You know, if you know the person, you've worked with them before, reach out, and that really opens the door. Now they feel comfortable with you and reaching out and asking you how you're doing.
Yeah, and you know, it's you know, you mentioned earlier, you know, interacting with people coming into the store where they may not necessarily be having a good day, right? And that's the same for anybody, right? We all have our bad days. I guess the difference is, you know, did I come into work and I just had a bad day, or is this getting consistent? You know, is there repetitive nature to my behavior, or a change in my behavior that is now consistently there that wasn't there before. Because we all have our off days. It doesn't necessarily mean I need to be sat down and counseled and have everybody reaching out like, are you okay? Because of that one bad day I had. But certainly, we're looking for some patterns there, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. And just understanding that, and you have to get to know the people that you work with and work for and work alongside. And when you do that, you'll be able to know if this is an isolated incident, it's a pattern, and maybe how do you check on them? And remembering things about a person, something as simple as remembering it could be their birthday. They'll tell you about the weekend they went on a soccer, their kids play soccer. So asking about those questions. And I think now with change in generation, change in the guard, it's really about their experiences personally. So that's their experience at work. And if you care about them, and that really I think has been helpful for me when leading a team, and just talking to people and getting them to relate to what's happening, maybe even kind of open up. But ask the question and let them know they may not want to talk today, but tomorrow may be different, or they may feel different months down the line. So the resources that we provide are always available, and there's no end date on those resources.
We get into that stigma conversation with Ren a little bit, and I think your perspective could be a little bit different from the standpoint of, Ren's looking at it holistically and across all associates, but we're talking more specifically in your role in an AP, and I brought up the point about, sort of my generation being one that was just, suck it up, deal with it. But I think there's some of that flows into the AP role too, right? Because we feel like, well, we're asset protection, so we're not supposed to need help, right? Or we're not, it's not okay to not be okay, because people are relying on me to do this, or I don't want someone to look at me the wrong way, because if I can't even take care of myself, then I certainly can't take care of the store, those types of things, right? How do you feel about that's comment, and how do you feel about how we get people past that?
So I do agree that in situations when you are tasked with securing people, you want to make sure that, not even make sure, sometimes you don't take the time to make sure you are secure in what you're doing, right? So it's really about giving and securing and protecting others, the company's assets. So when something happens, our AP teams, they really look at it as a part of the job. And the reason why we started the live information sessions around well-being was to let them know that it's not a part of the job, and it can affect you, and we just have to create spaces. So that's what we've been intentional about, creating spaces to have those conversations, give them the opportunity to open up, and really have to say it. It's not even just giving them the space, but saying, hey, these aren't normal occurrences in certain situations, and if it's impacting you, it's okay. And these are the resources that we have, and these are some tools and tricks on how to work through those situations, whether you're a leader, that you need to be able to work through your team, or if you're personally impacted by it. And these are some things that you can do to help you manage how you feel about the situation and how it impacted your life or your mental health.
And I think it's great that you guys are having this conversation in your AP circles, right? Because I'm going to be more likely to have a peer-to-peer, yeah, this is really bothering me, or yeah, this is a problem, than I am going outside of that circle where store leaders or corporate management or someone else I may feel like they may look at me differently. I won't say they'll look at me differently, I'll just may feel that way, right? So I think it's great that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, and when you think about it, some of the more practical stuff, tomorrow it's okay if you don't feel good to come to work today, and that's not something that's counted against you. We understand, we know that's what is needed. So just being understanding in a lot of those situations, I think, is also helpful. And I think in AP, it's really about role modeling those behaviors. So now others see it's okay, and really give them permission to be able to have those same feelings and be like, oh, okay, this is normal. not to be okay is normal in this situation. It's okay. Maybe I need to take tomorrow off after maybe a difficult apprehension the day before. Those things are okay. And I think that's going to be huge for us. And I think that's what we've been really good at, in continuing that conversation of what else could we do to make sure our teams understand that it's okay that something you did at work impacted you in a way that you may not feel good about it, and you may need to talk to somebody, you may need to take a day off. What are those different things that you may need to do? And we have resources available to support that.
No, but we a lot of times we focus on what people can do better. Obviously, that's important, and I'm gonna start by asking that question. If you look at retail leaders in general, asset protection leaders, but retail leaders in general, what do you think that they can do better? But then I would follow that up with ask, what do you think that they're really doing well?
So I think it's, I'm gonna almost reiterate, what I was saying before. It's really about listening, reacting, and then highlighting the resources that many companies already have. And I think it's not just about having the resources, but how can we ensure your colleagues are aware of the resources, that they're available, where to find them, so they can take advantage of them, I think is really key. And some of the things that companies are doing well, I think having these type of conversations, making space for them, I think that's something that companies are doing well, because I know when I started 20 years ago, there was no conversation around mental health or diversity or awareness. Those conversations didn't exist in the workplace. You couldn't say certain things. It was like taboo. But now I think everybody is getting uncomfortable with having those conversations. So we just have to keep having those conversations.
Yeah, there was no, a difficult apprehension affected me yesterday. It was, well, that was yesterday. What have you done for me today? Right. So, and that thank goodness has evolved and changed, and most companies are away from that, that type of approach, which is really good. And I think that in and of itself has helped, with the mental health of our profession overall. If you go back, 20, 30 plus years, it was all about, cops and robbers, and it was all about catching the bad guy, and it was, and making numbers and, doing all that type of stuff. And we're not those people anymore.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's really about safety.
Absolutely.
That's physical safety, mental safety, and emotional safety. And we're making sure that that's always the number one conversation starter when we talk about anything related to losses and the work that needs to be done.
Well said. Well said. Well, if we have some, I think there were a couple of little questions that came in. I know you're on a tight schedule today, Toby, too, but going back to Jack's comment about, wanting to leave on a positive note. What do you think what would be your, you got an AP audience here that's listening about, what to do about their mental health. How do we take care of ourselves? What's your top advice for AP professionals in looking out for themselves, and their mental health?
I really enjoyed what Ren was saying about just all the information that you're coming into, hypervigilant emails. I'll give a couple tips and tricks that I've been talking about recently. So one, when I start my day, I don't respond to emails. I set my day. I start my day, because you look at it, you get an email, you feel to the same point, you feel it's super urgent, and you have to respond to it. And then that kind of takes over your day, where your day is kind of leading you as opposed to you leading your day. So it feels uncomfortable every day. I haven't gotten used to it, but I start my day with what do I need to get done? What are maybe some to-dos I need to follow up on? What are some emails maybe I need to push out before I start taking in and digesting in a lot of information? The second thing is vacations. And I'll take a step back, role modeling. As leaders, we have to role model. So if you lead a team or you lead people and you're sending out emails on your vacation, you're communicating on your vacation, your team is not going to feel okay to disconnect, and they need to. I think we work really hard at our jobs, and we need that time to decompress. So taking vacations, scheduling them. I set my vacations up at the beginning of the year, and they've been the same for probably the last 3 to 5 years. And I'm trusting my team to handle what comes up, because I've given them the guidance. I know they can do it, and I just have to let them do what I know they're more than capable of. But just decompressing so you come back as your best self, right? If you have a phone, you got to charge your phone. If you don't, the battery dies. So you have to replenish yourself so you can now be 100% when you're at work to face some of the challenging opportunities. So I think the recharging has really been key for me.
I think vacation and days off, I mean,
Yes.
we talk about a lot of vacation where we say, you gotta, but that's, a week, a 2 week, a 3 weeks per year, that type of thing. But most of us have at least 2 days off during the week. And we've got to be really good about making sure that we're taking that time away and saying, okay, that work day is over, and this is about me, and this is about my family, and this is about the things that I like doing, outside of work, and not, well, let me go, it's Saturday, but let me check my email just in case, and that type of thing.
Yeah, because in asset protection, a lot of stuff, everything feels urgent, whether it's what we do, everything feels urgent. So to make yourself comfortable, put mechanisms in place. If there's a special event, if there's a anniversary, if there's a child's birthday, making sure there's somebody that can handle a special event that does come up in your store at work, so you can really enjoy those moments with your family, to have some balance and be able to trust somebody that it's going to be dealt with the same way you would have dealt with it when you come back, and your family will appreciate that.
Absolutely. Jack, any final thoughts?
I think we've got it covered. I think that we had two terrific speakers today. I think they both made a lot of great points, and I hope folks were listening, because there were some really important topics that we discussed today that I think it could help everybody move forward in the right direction, especially going into the next few months.
Yeah, this is obviously the time when we're heading into the holidays, as stresses go up even more, right, Toby? So it's great to see that you guys are have this program rolling out now before the holidays. Make sure that your teams have those resources, and it sounds like a recommendation that you would make to everybody else out there as well, that now's the time. We were talking last month about preparing your AP teams for the holidays. We did a whole thing on Christmas in July. But I think from a mental health perspective, not only does it need to just be all the time, but certainly, that's a time of year when stresses go up, both professionally and personally. And I think the fact that you guys are rolling out this program and making these resources available should be applauded, because it's the perfect time to do it. So congratulations on that. And thanks for doing all that you do over there at Macy's. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. So again, same thing on questions for Toby. If there's any questions you want to throw in the Q&A, and we're going to list those out. We're going to take them to Toby. We're going to take them to Ren, and then we're going to put out an email to the group of everybody who's registered. We'll send out that follow-up in the next few days ahead. So that's going to wrap us up for today. And we're going to start with thank you for our sponsor, Fifth Theory. Again, fifththeory.com. If you have a moment to check them out and learn a little bit more about them, recommend that you do so. And we want to thank Fifth Theory for their support in helping us bring this program to you today. Also, big thank you to LPF. Those 3 CEU credits. Make sure that if you are LPC or LPQ certified, that you keep track of your attendance today, because that gets you 3 CEU credits. And there's that QR code that I promised I would put back up on the screen. So I know for the past hour, everyone's been sitting there waiting with their phone, just dying to scan that QR code. There it is. So hopefully you had your phone ready, you scanned the QR code, and you're ready to go.
How much is that subscription, Kevin? How much?
Oh, that was my favorite 4-letter word. That would be free, FREE, free,
Okay.
free. All right. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe. We appreciate you joining us today. And remember that it is okay to ask for help. So if you or someone you know is struggling in any way, shape, or form, there are so many resources out there. Please be strong enough to reach out for help. Jack?
Thanks again, everybody. Thanks, speakers. Thanks, audience. Stay safe. Have a great week.
Beautiful. Thanks, everybody. Take care.